attendees are in listen-only mode.
We welcome everyone to the webinar organized by my CFO, a market leader in CFO outsourcing industry. The topic of discussion today will be how to use rating exercise as a health check, reality check for the organization. Rating agencies play a powerful role in shaping up business sentiments towards a company. A rating exercise provides independent, objective assessments of creditworthiness of companies and helps stakeholders understand the risk associated with a company. A lot of effort generally goes behind the entire validation exercise, including assessment of the company's business risk, credit standing, geopolitical benefits, etc. The quality of the rating in most cases determines the quality of the organization and its market credibility. While ratings are largely viewed in India as a regulatory requirement, is it time that we view this as an exercise that determines the health check of the company? Today we have Mr. Deep Mukherjee from Corporate Ratings and Mr. Deepak Narayanan from my CFO with us, who will share their perspectives on the importance that organizations should attach to ratings to determine the organization's health, rather view than this as a regulatory compulsion and as a one-time exercise. Deepak will deliver a presentation for the next 20 minutes. Deep will deliver a presentation for the next 20 minutes, followed by a question and answers session, which will be led by Deepak, asking Deep some questions. You are requested to send us your questions, which we can then pass on to Deepak as a part of the question and answer session. Let me give you some brief about Mr. Deep Mukherjee. Mr. Deep Mukherjee is a Senior Director for Western India Head at Corporate Ratings. Deep has around 12 years of hands-on experience in the financial service industry, focusing on risk management, credit and research. Currently, as a Senior Director of Corporate Ratings, he is the Western India Head for Corporate Ratings. He handles a team of research experts responsible for coming out with ratings and research reports on various companies and key sectors. He is also a visiting faculty at IIM Calcutta, where he takes PGP courses in risk management in financial institutions and commodity finance. He also conducts MDP sessions on enterprise risk management and behavioral biases in managerial decision making. He is a regular commentator on business and economic issues in electronic and print media, both domestic and international. His columns on business and economics is frequently published in business publications such as Economic Times, Financial Chronicle, Financial Express, The Week, and Business Today, to name a few. Prior to India Ratings, he has established and handled the global quantitative corporate trading evaluation teams of Amex. Let me give you a brief introduction of Deepak Narayanan, co-founder and director of my CFO. Deepak is a qualified chartered accountant with close to 12 years of experience in the finance field. Deepak leads the my CFO practice and specializes in assisting companies to implement their business strategies, including drawing up business plans, developing budgets, benchmarking studies, implementing business process improvements, developing SOPs, designing performance metrics, managing the IT, ERP, BI tool implementation, development of MIS tools, and in improving the finance function of MyCFO clients. MyCFO works with companies from pre-revenue stage to mature and evolved companies, particularly those which are VC PE backed. He has worked with Deloitte and Ernst & Young in Bangalore and Mumbai respectively. During his stint with these firms, he has worked with companies like Unilever, ITC, Sanofi Aventis, Western Union, Titan Industries, Signeta, Solar Pharma, amongst others. Deepak blogs regularly and has also been a speaker at various industry forums. Deepak is well-read and a self-proclaimed sports enthusiast who lives in Mumbai with his parents and wife. Over to Mr. Deep.
Thanks, Yogesh. This is Deep Mukherjee. I will not confuse the audience and everyone else by telling my full name, because my full name is Deep Narayan Mukherjee. There's already some confusion between Deep and Deepak. So I'll start the discussion. Firstly, I would like to thank my CFO and my dear friend Deepak Narayanan for inviting me and providing me the opportunity to talk to all of you. Thanks a lot, Deepak. We represent India Ratings and Research, which is a 100% Fitch-owned company. Previously, we were known as Fitch Ratings India, but in the last 2 years, our name got changed to India Ratings, and we rate corporates from some of the largest corporates to the smallest ones, currently having over close to 2,000 corporate ratings. We have done in last within 6 months a detailed report on SME and how their credit has changed in last couple of years, and that will form the backdrop of the discussion. Because as has been mentioned by Yogesh, that it is not about just getting a rating. It also means you know where you stand, whether you will survive or not. So before we go into the discussion, as a backdrop, I'll just share with all of you some of the snippets of how the credit profile of SMEs has evolved in last 5 odd years. Can you go to the slide, please? Next. So the agenda would be essentially 4 topics: credit availability, operational performance, and sectoral matrices. On credit availability, I mean, just to give some backdrop of the research which we'll be sharing, we have analyzed almost 1,500 SMEs for this study, studying their behavior all the way from financial year 2009 to 2013. And this 1,500 odd corporates were essentially divided into 2 groups. As you will see in the presentation, you know, we are referring to some companies as small companies and some companies as medium companies. So small companies are those where the revenue size is below 150 crores, so which is stays less than 150 crores. Medium companies are those which lies between, has a revenue of 150 crore to 300 crore. In this entire data set of 1,520 SMEs, none of the companies above 300 crores were considered. So this is a very, very focused analysis on the small companies. And as a lot of you would know from first-hand experience, that getting credit for a small company is not at all an easy thing, particularly under the current circumstances where banks, because of their losses, have been very careful of whom they are lending, and sometimes maybe unnecessarily cautious on small companies. And this is what we see in their books as well. On the extreme left, you will find 2 charts, 2 sidebar charts, where you see that for medium companies, which is companies between 150 crore to 300 crore, there's hardly any debt growth between 2012 and 2013, which means that they have not been getting the requisite funding to grow. A part of the problem being obviously the reluctance of the bank. The smaller companies, because some of them come under priority sector or otherwise, they have got some amount of credit, they have shown some growth, but again, if you look at it, the growth has not been substantial. You know, in subsequent slides we will show you the growth of loans that banks has provided to small companies vis-a-vis medium and large companies, and you see the discrimination. On the right hand side of the same chart, you will find bar graphs where we show what has been the sources of debt. So for medium, you will see secured and unsecured. Here I will tell you, unsecured is essentially the loan promoters have given to their own company. For medium companies, we see that it has been falling, but for small companies, it looks like that the promoters has been putting in a lot of their own cash, which is actually very heartening to note that for small companies, the promoters are, you know, have a much higher skin in the game than possibly larger companies whom the RBI governor was referring to, who do not have too much skin in the game. But then it is somewhat surprising that if you have promoters who are able to plow in at a regular interval the money into their own company, why they are not treated that well by the banks. Let's go to the next slide, which will tell you the muted credit growth. And here we will see how the credit growth has, since on the right hand top corner you will find the chart which is show debt increase, and you would find micro and small. The source is from RBI databases, medium and large. Again, you would see that for medium, micro and small, again they have been the beneficiary of several rules and regulations which you know, a lot of them related to do with priority sector or specialized government schemes related to some industries. But the medium sector, which is referred to here, which would be broadly in the category what we are discussing today, there is ever since FY10, which is the brown line in the chart, you would hardly see any debt increase. You would hardly see any debt increase in this sector, and this goes to prove that even before the banking system started facing its credit crisis, which typically started around financial year 2013, the credit availability of medium-sized companies were very small. If you look at the companies which are large, which are the large listed players with sort of turnover well above 500 crores, their revenue growth, despite they having defaults, has their credit growth has continued unabated. Again, the fact that you see is on the left hand bottom corner, you see how this lack of credit growth has affected the mid-sized and small-sized companies. You'd find that for mid-sized, the capex has actually started falling from FY12 to FY13. We don't have the full FY14 numbers, but whatever FY14 numbers we have got, the capex actually has been very, very minuscule for mid-sized. For small companies, again, they have been growing around, but again, the scale is much smaller. So, for better or for worse, we see that the banking system is extra cautious when it lends to small companies, and this caution has started possibly from FY 2009 after the Lehman Brothers, and whereas large companies continue to access the banking market, smaller companies has not been all that successful. That is, despite the fact, as we have shown in the previous slide, that the promoters have been plowing in their own money at regular intervals as credit to their company. So this is something that the small companies, possibly through their own organization, needs to highlight and focus to suitable authorities. Can we move to the next slide, please? Operation performance. Yeah. On operation performance, we show how the companies has been doing. So on the right hand top, you would find in blue line the small companies in our database, which is companies below 150 crore. Medium-sized companies 150 to 300 is the brown line, and BSE 500 corporates is the green line. Now, here we would like to point out that as we all know, the smallest guys in business get squeezed from every side, be it their suppliers or be it their customers, and not so surprisingly their EBITDA margin, and this is the median EBITDA margin or something like the average margin for these companies, they have always been low, irrespective of whether it's good times or bad times. They have always been low, and they have fallen further. A case in point is, if you look at years 2009 to 2011, you'd find that BSE 500, the largest corporates, their EBITDA margin actually improved very, very significantly. And of course, after 2011, they have started falling, but we do not see any significant improvement in small companies. And again, not only small companies, when they improved less. When they started falling, they fell at arguably the rate of deterioration from whatever their level of EBITDA was much higher than larger guys. Now, this is clearly a problem. I mean, just to throw some perspective, as I said, the small businessman gets squeezed from both sides. be it its suppliers or be it its customers. So you would find sectors such as auto or capital goods where whenever there is a demand issue, say for instance in the auto, the first hit always goes to the tier 1 supplier who are the direct suppliers to the original equipment manufacturers of auto, and then to the tier 2 suppliers. So you would see that the inventory build up, increasing requirement of working capital always happens with the supplier, and then the suppliers, which is typically the small and mid-sized enterprises, unable to short of bear any longer, then only it hits the large player at the top. And we see the same thing here also. So there is an extended period where the revenue margins of the small and mid-sized players fell. When it rises in good time 2010, 2011, we didn't see a significant quantum of rise, but in fall it has fallen faster than the larger guys. The hypothesis here is that when will the SMEs health totally recover? It would recover obviously when the big guys, the guys who head the supply chain table, once their demand comes back, they start making good margin, then only they will sort of be more liberal with the trade terms, and after so that only the small and medium-sized companies would get their margins back. So, they're getting squeezed from all sides, so to say. Bankers are reluctant to give them credit. Their customers would typically would be they would be forming in lot of cases the part of supply chain of some large corporate, and they would be paying them at delay. I mean, this is part of another report that we have published, but the trade payable days for large corporates has actually doubled in last 3-4 years, and we would see similarly that the receivable days of small and mid-sized companies have again doubled. So, which is a clear correlation that where the problem is. So clearly, if one looks at the situation of the small player, it's not good, and they have to wait for quite some time before their margins recover, and they are, and also banks treat them favorably. If you can move to the next slide, operational performance continued. There you would see some of the things which we were saying, the deterioration in working capital. Here on the right hand side, we take the working capital cycle, the blue pillars or are BSE 500 corporates, the yellow pillars are the mid-sized companies in the database, and the green pillars are the small-sized companies in the database. You would find that there was a period between 2009-2011 when there we see no significant deterioration in BSE 500 corporates, but post that we see the amount of deterioration that BSE 500 corporates faced. The deterioration was much higher in small-sized corporates, because small-sized corporates are often Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers. They are not even, they do not supply, they are not direct suppliers to the OEM also. So this was just in line with what we are saying. They get squeezed by their channel trade partners, and what we see is, cash generation, which is the left-hand side chart. You can have accounting EBITDA, but every business at the end of the day, what services your debt and from where you pull dividend, it is not accounting EBITDA. Your systems need to generate cash. That is what serves you debt, and that's what gives you, future capital for growth. We find that for small companies between 2009 to 2013, the cash flow from operations margin was actually a measly 1%. Between 2011 to 2013, it was very, very small, and therefore, when the bigger players in the channel realized that the SMEs cannot be squeezed further, then they had to take a hit in the working capital. So not exactly a great state of affairs. I'll go to the last slide of my presentation, sectoral credit metrics, where we show again how the EBITDA margin has moved by specific segments. Here we take 6 segments where there is a very high concentration of SMEs. I mean the report which I am referring to, which I published, and I'll be happy to share that with all of you post the discussion. There are almost 10-11 sectors, but here we see the up for this current discussion only 6 segments where there's a high concentration of SME. They are chemical, textile, power, and you have power in the sense that we do not have SME power producers, unfortunately, but yes, there are a lot of people who are suppliers to power producers, suppliers to capital goods. There are small, not all real estate guys are very large. There are small real estate players who are SMEs also. They do one project at a time. A lot of them are located in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, semi-rural. So there are those real estates also. You'll find steel. I mean, steel here, it would mean either steel traders, small-time steel manufacturers, some processors of steel, and of course construction. Here the trend is available for you, and when you compare this trend with for the same sector, the sectors trade for the trend in EBITDA for BSE 500 corporates, you would find very, very clearly that the EBITDA margin of the smaller players take a first hit, and after their margins and cash flows are squeezed, then only the larger players start taking a hit. Not so surprisingly, number of companies with interest cover, which is whether you have enough funds from operations to service your interest, and if it's anything below 1, it means that you do not generate enough funds to service your interest. You find a sectoral trend with steel, textile, construction leading the show, where you have a significant amount of stressed companies who would possibly have payment trouble. So the point here, why I'm using this data as a backdrop, is that yes, everyone knows that SMEs are the small, weaker players who today are weak, but tomorrow some of them would definitely become large players. Because of their size, they often get neglected by the bank. Because of their weak bargaining power, if they have a large company who is their supplier, or if they are their customers are large guys, their margins get squeezed. So it is very essential for the promoter or the CFO of such SMEs to be cautious not only of the macro risk and how it is evolving, but how they are sort of deciding on the strategy to hedge that risk. It is much more difficult, given the limited resources a CFO or a CEO of a small company has. It is much more difficult for them, much more challenging to manage the macro environment risk than a large guy, for the simple reason, before the macro environment changes, your credit source will dry up, your working capital cycle would expand. So the challenges a typical CFO face is quite unique. Just that the size of your company or revenue is small doesn't mean challenges are any less or it requires less talent. I would possibly argue it requires much more talent for a CFO and a CEO to bring a small company from a small scale to make it a mid-sized or a large company than for the CFO or a promoter of a large company of 5,000 to make it 6,000. It's much more challenging for a company in 150 crore to make it 300 crore. So to that extent, the amount of analytical support, hand-holding, risk check, health check that they can get, and they can get honest, independent feedback, the better it is for them. And therefore, the key message that we would discuss and deliver is, do not look as, your supporters like my CFO or, for instance, rating agency as just people who help you with managing your company or help you to get a rating. Try to look at them as your mirror, your some independent evaluator who will praise you when things are good, who will sort of also point out things where you need to manage, because you need to absolutely survive to become large, and you would know well, you would be very well aware that the past record of banks' implementation of Surface has been that Surface is much more successful on smaller corporates than on larger corporates, because you would not have that much legal muscle, legal strength to drag on dispute with the company for 5-10 years. So how you manage your risk, how you react to when a rating agency or someone outside your company points out to your shortcomings and how you address them, that actually would depend on how successful you would become going forward. With this, I would open up to questions, and I would pass over to my friend Deepak Narayanan for his comments, questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Deep.
Yep.
Thank you, Deep, for that presentation. This was truly insightful, and also we could see a lot of numbers out there. I think we all suspected, given the degrowth in the GDP over the last 18 months or so, that the numbers weren't as rosy as what it used to be in the past. But looking at some of the statistics, especially those relating to degrowth in revenues and EBITDAs, and particularly cash flows, I mean, which is a worrying sign. And you are right in mentioning or stressing the fact that, look, accounting profits don't necessarily mean cash flows, right? So those were statistics which are fairly insightful. Let me begin with the first question. You rightly pointed out that companies are today, I think the larger companies have got better access to credit, and they are also being looked at more favorably than some of the as compared to some of the mid to smaller companies, right? So as a company which is looking at a rating exercise, particularly a mid-sized or a smaller company, what should this rating exercise really mean to them, right? So should it mean as doing this just for the sake of ticking or checking a box as far as regulation is concerned, or would it mean that they also need to look at this rating exercise as a measure of hygiene?
Very good question, Deepak. It's something like this: if any consultant or rating agency comes and would say to the SME that I would give you a higher rating, the SME should not go. Let me give you an analogy. Say, for instance, you are going for a health checkup because your insurer has asked you for a health checkup, and based on which they will charge you your life insurance premium. Now, you can go to two people. You can go to a clinic A, which will tell you your correct health problems, and based on which your insurance premium would be higher. You can alternately go to clinic B, which will possibly take 10 rupees extra for your blood report and ECG, but will give you a different ECG report or a different blood report, which will reduce your insurance premium. But the problem is two things. The short-term motive is always to pay a lesser insurance premium by showing a better health. But the long-term problem, assuming you are actually interested in surviving a long time, is to actually go to clinic A and tell them that give me the correct report. Insurance premium will come and go. But if your weakness is, if there's a cardiac problem, or if there's a cholesterol or sugar problem, you need to address it. Similarly with rating agencies, you can go to rating agency which will tell you that your problem is A, B, C, D, and therefore your rating is low. Rating low doesn't mean that it will never go up. There are SMEs, let me tell you, who despite being 200 crores are in investment grade. So it is not just the size. It is no rating agency ever says that you are small. Therefore, there are companies which are less than 200 crore and are in investment grade. What you need as a promoter, because that's the companies at the end of the day, your baby, you would want your baby to grow and thrive and survive, is to sort of act on the feedback that is being given, and not just get a tick box that I got a higher rating. And the rating, if correctly done, is a reflection of your positives as well as your negatives. So let me tell you something. Say for instance, a lot of times the usual level, people say leverage measures or margins. You can have in 1 year a good leverage number which can give you almost makes you look like an investment grade. But someone can tell you, a rating agency can stringently tell you that, dear sir, you have just one large customer, and if the customer sort of pulls the plug on you, or at a bad time squeeze your margin, today your margins which are 20% would come down to 10% in no time, and your leverage which is currently less than 2 would go up to 4. The feedback therefore the business, how the business should react is they should actively think on how to get more customers, address the risk by reducing the customer concentration, and move forward. The other thing they can do is they can just go to another rating agency which will not highlight this risk and get a higher rating, and then they will forget. And when actually the downturn comes and the leverage does happen to deteriorate as was expected because of customer concentration, they may be tempted to go for another rating agency which will give them a higher rating, but the problem remains. And ultimately we would find a lot of these companies which was just focusing on rating so that they get a bank loan and not addressing the risk, I would tell you a lot of them ended up as NPAs or CDRs. Whereas there are a lot of other companies who took the feedback from rating agencies very seriously, addressed them, and got a higher rating over a period of time, and despite the downturn they are doing fabulously well.
Right. So that's true, Deep. I think a couple of things just to extend from where you left. One, what you seem to be saying is that I take the insurance analogy that you said, right? So the idea is not to not only to get a good insurance cover, but also to see whether you survive to be able to not take that cover, right? So in a sense, it is contradicting each other. So it's the same with the company as well. So you may want to hide the bad things about a company, but if your company does not survive, then everything is lost,
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. And the second thing, if I were to compare it, I think if you look around now, I would take a PE analogy or a venture capital analogy. I think today the trend is the more money you get, the better company you are, which is unfortunately not the case, right? So the health of the company, the basic fundamentals in terms of whether you're a profit-making company, whether you've got the right set of customers, whether your cash flows are steady, whether you've got more recurring line of business. I think these are compromised and people, when they go and raise funding, especially all the e-commerce companies that you look at, I mean the trend seems to be only in terms of saying, okay, tumko 100 crore mila, mera valuation 500 crore hai. So somewhere I think this short-term thinking has taken over most of us, and it's no different in the case of ratings as well. But completely take your point on the need to move beyond just the rating and to look at the business fundamentals. Which brings me to the next question, which is, so just leading up to what you said, today companies also have got an issue because they are in need of funds, and as your previous slide showed us, SMEs and mid-sized companies are actually degrowing in terms of the amount of debt that they have been able to get from bankers. So does a adverse rating, if the adverse rating is really going to impact them, then to what extent does it impact? I mean, let's say a rating agency gives them a rating which is not so good. So then what is the next step for a company? What do they do with that rating? Because it virtually shuts them out from any kind of funding.
No, I think see how it should ideally work is just to get on the, a company usually starts as so I think below 10 crore you don't require a rating. Okay. And a lot of companies, I'll give you good examples. So there are a lot of companies who even for 2-3 crore, they do a private rating, in the sense, they get themselves rated and they ask for feedback and they work on this feedback. So when their business grow and they cross over the threshold of over 10 crore, they actually they prepare themselves for 2-3 years to so that they get a good rating. So above 10 crore, you are mandatorily required to take a rating for the loan purposes. Now here also there can be unrated companies. Now bankers will always pursue you to get a rating, which is correctly the case. But during the phase that you are unrated, you should actively see what are the changes in business practices that you can do to sort of give more stability to your company. So it is not always by the way size and margin. Even if you are small, you can follow business practices which will give your margins more stability. You can have better quality of balance sheet. Because even if a banker or a rating agency looks at you, if you have played too much with the balance sheet and have fluffed up the numbers, these guys would be, the bankers and the rating agency will be able to understand it. So everything else remaining same, if I see a 60-50 crore company whose quality of balance sheet is much better than a 300 crore company with a iffy quality balance sheet, bankers would be more willing to lend it, everything said and done. So it is not just, and they would appreciate every rating. I mean, most of the rating agencies, when they place the rating, they also tell constraints. They also tell the constraints on the rating, that why the rating is at the current level. Now, if everything is fine with the company and rating is constrained only because of size of scale of operations, let me tell you, bankers don't hold it against you if everything else is fine. Because it is not like an automatic machine driven system. Human beings are involved who have experience in evaluating companies, and so it would be slightly unfair to say that if your rating is low for reasons that of your scale, banks will sort of blacklist you. What actually banks does is they know that you are inflating your balance sheet, your track record has been previously iffy with other banks, or you have gone, you have previously rated BB, now you have got a rating agency who has given you BBB minus. Banker will immediately say that, okay, no, I need a BBB plus. Because the whole purpose is they would like to refuse credit to people who they are uncomfortable with, and these are some of the reasons. Otherwise, there are companies who are also in BB, and they are in BB because of size and scale, but have excellent quality balance sheet, good quality management who focuses on, who are very well aware and conservative, doesn't follow risky business practices, doesn't cut corners in production, etc. They are able to access credit even now.
Right. So, so what you seem to be saying, Deep, essentially is that a banker would not necessarily only look at the size and the margins, but so things like the underlying business model, the business practices. It could be the quality of the team, right? So all these go into consideration before a banker would extend credit to any company.
Absolutely.
Right. So that brings me to the next question, Deep, which is to say that, see, as a rating agency, you would have worked with several companies, and you would have worked with the CXOs out there, right? So let's say a CEO or a CFO of any mid-sized company. So, so give us a little bit of an insight as to what kind of a role does each of these stakeholders need to play, for them to improve the credit, for them to improve the rating of an organization, and also as part of the rating exercise that an external rating agency conducts, what is their role typically?
Sure. So, what we have seen in a company, the CFOs should be the conscience keeper of the promoter or the CEO, and conscience keeper with respect to sustenance and survivability of the company. Because the promoter or the entrepreneur would always be driving for growth, he is a risk taker by definition, and therefore he is where he is today. If he has started from a 10 lakh business and if he has today reached even 10 crore or 100 crore, it is because the promoter or the entrepreneur has that entrepreneurial spirit and has that risk-taking ability, the risk appetite, and therefore he has grown such a lot. But what happens is all of us are human beings. This often builds a certain type of overconfidence in promoters. Therefore comes the role of a CFO who has to be a conscience keeper. Say, if whenever the CEO goes in an expansion plan or wants to take out extra dividend, and if always the CFO agrees, the CFO may be in the good books of the promoter temporarily, but 3 to 5 years down the line, when the company is in trouble, the relationship will sour. So the CFO's job is a conscience keeper to the promoter entrepreneur and tell what is possible, what is not possible, and within this extremes of possibility and impossibility, they should be able to highlight the risk return profile of those decisions and sensitize the promoter entrepreneur that this is the, you can get the higher margins, but these are the risks. If your plan doesn't work out, this is what you will have to, the cost you have to bear. Their job is to sensitize that even after knowing that if the promoter goes ahead, fine. So, and once they have agreed, that is obviously the CFO's job to see how best it is executed. So first, there is a strategic input that the CFO needs to give, that yes, you want to grow from 100 crore to 200 crore. These are the various scenarios. This is in optimistic scenario, you will reach there. Not so optimistic scenario, you will reach there with a delay with higher cost. Pessimistic scenario, you will lose money. These are the broad estimates, and would you like to go? Now, if they decide that they would like to go, then the CFO's job comes to that the plan is followed. Ruthlessly, the plan is followed in terms of timeliness and cost of executing, and give constant feedback to the promoter. So it is, you know, one is almost like the CEO promoter is the visionary, and this guy, the part of the execution risk, actually belongs to the CFO, how the whole thing will be mechanized, and the two needs to work in tandem. But yes, the CFO, again to go back to my original question, has to be the conscience keeper. Beyond the point, if the company goes down, you know, the CEO or the promoter will blame the CFO, "Aapne pehle kyun nahi bola?" So
right.
Yes, and the CFO have other jobs also. I mean, they are the spokesperson of the company. They are the primary spokesperson of the company to the outside, stakeholders, be it regulators, be it bankers, be it prospective private equity investors. You know, they are able to talk with the language of finance much better than the promoter, who may be a technical expert in that industry or maybe an excellent trade knowledge in that industry, but may not be a finance person. So he is to the finance world, the CFO is the face of the company. So yes, has multiple roles, very critical, but the best role for the CFO, which I feel based on my experience with working, is that of the conscience keeper of the company.
Sure. And what are the areas typically, what are the situations that you see companies approaching a rating agency beyond just sanctioning of loan or debt?
Yeah, I think increasingly what we are seeing is obviously for a bank loan over 10 crore it is a mandatory requirement, but we are seeing a lot of companies globally, they use rating agency as an independent evaluator. So they per se would not have a lot of debt and they want to grow. Here the promoter doesn't think that next year will I double my revenue, and these promoters think that 10-15 years down the line I want to grow 20 times. So today if I am 100 crore, in 10 years I should be 2,000-3,000 crore company. What will take to reach me there? What type of financing, at what cost? How do I traverse this? What are the risks that I need to be cognizant of? And after being cognizant of the risk, how do I monitor them? And after monitoring them, how do I mitigate them? They use rating agency as a critical partner who would independently, without fear, favor, or malice, give you that input. And then they work with CFO, institutions like yourself, my CFO, and find out how do I track this risk. How do I mitigate this risk? And it's almost a long-term strategic partnership. The second that we see is, apart from bank loan rating, is a lot of companies are trying to raise funds from strategic investors. Now, what strategic investors often get a very solid feeling about a company is when an independent agency has given them a rating, which is different, by the way, from a valuation exercise. Yeah. You can get a valuation exercise, and one can sort of tweak the valuation here and there, and that's a pure negotiation. But they want a confirmation on the stability of cash flow, the quality of management, how does the strategy look like in terms of the peers in that industry or in other industries. So a rating with a proper rating rationale which describes the positives and the negatives of the company is a lot of times, and yes, this was not there, by the way, Deepak, this was not there 3-4 years back. This is something which we are seeing in last 2-3 years. A lot of these so-called equity investors or strategic prospective investors, they are spending a lot of time in rating agencies in understanding what this company is all about. Yes, so if you take up any corporate event, say even a small company is trying to merge itself with another of its subsidiary or another group company, they often ask the rating agency to do a view on, if I merge, what will be the rating, what will be my cost of funding for that. It is clearly not so, and this is a development we are seeing in last 2, 3, 4 years. Definitely before 4 years, this type of multiple diverse usage of rating for critical strategic decisioning or evaluation of health or evaluation of prospective health of corporates under various corporate merger acquisition scenarios, this was not there. But we are seeing that in India, and this is what also used to happen globally, but that's a positive development we see in India.
Right, okay. So I believe that there are no more questions, Deep. I've asked all the questions that I've got. So probably we will. So I've put down the details of both you and me, and those in the audience who have got any kind of questions can please reach us, either of us. I think Deep preferably, because he's an expert on rating. So we look forward to having you for our next webinar, probably in the next 15 days. Thank you, Deep, for consenting to be a speaker here. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Deepak, for inviting. It was a pleasure to be part of this discussion. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the webinar. In case of any further specific questions, request you to mail it to the ID as flashed on the screen. Thank you. Thanks a lot for attending.
Thanks a lot.